Now, tonight we'll be taking a look at the judiciary and the noble profession of the lawyer. We'll be focusing on the Nigerian Bar Association and their plans for the country. And also we'll be taking a look at some happenings right now. It's an election year, so while we take a look at things affecting the judiciary and the court processes, we cannot shy away about their impact on the elections pre and post opt. So that will be the subject of the discussion. Tonight I'm joined by the second vice president of the NBA, Mr. Chukwuemeka Clement. He joins me now to shed more light on this matter. Mr. Chukwuemeka Clement, let me start by congratulating you. It's been a while, and we've not seen since you came into your new position. So congratulations and welcome.
Thank you very much, Kaftan family.
Welcome, sir. All right, let's start with what happened recently at the NBA dialogue, where the president made mention of he gave an apology to Nigerians that lawyers had not been properly doing what they're supposed to, and then he pledged that would change. What can you tell us, or can you elaborate on what that really means?
Well, actually, we have a person with very humane character in the person of our current president, Y.C. Mikel, S.A.N., O.O.N. He has been honored with O.O.N. at least by some of his activities and all the things that he has done in contributing to humanity in his state and the country at large. And I must tell you that if I were to be the president, I will equally apologize to Nigerians. It has gotten to a stage where when you are being called a lawyer in your streets, you are being respected. But currently, sometimes if your neighbors even get to know that you're a lawyer, you are being booed, because there are some silent responsibilities that has been accorded by our profession that we ought to be doing. This is protection to human rights, speaking for the less privileged, and holding the government accountable on behalf of the citizens of the country. We owe the society a lot, and it is very, very right for my president to apologize to the entire country and the world at large, because we are, by the profession and by the gifts that God have given unto lawyers, even from the Bible. It is very, very obvious that we are meant to be guiding and protecting the conscience of the people, and as well speaking for the voiceless, even speaking and representing and holding the government accountable on behalf of the citizens of the country. That is exactly one of our cardinal responsibility, and I think our president have completely commenced that particular development as a foundational issue from the dialogue, State of the Nation dialogue that have just concluded, and he captured only three. If you look at it on economy, security, and access to justice. So these things are where a lot of people were looking at it as if we invited the presidential aspirant as a debate. No, it wasn't a debate. It was purely for them to look at. We brought in professionals that spoke on these key issues, and they listened to them, and we brought them on for them to answer one or two, or to relate on certain things as regards to those three key issues. And what our president and this particular administration have just done is purely to find a way where, if you assume all the presidential aspirants, each of the community that actually came out of that will be presented to each of the presidential candidates according to how the president's intention, how he intends to do it, will be presented to all the presidential aspirants. Whoever that emerges will definitely know that this is what he owes us, and will be timelessly be reminding him or her of that particular thing that that we really agreed upon on that particular dialogue.
All right, that's fair enough. I think citizens are always happy to hear when different professionals and key stakeholders make demands and are ready to hold the government accountable. So we'll get more into that. But still on the side of the lawyers, the NBA, it's a new executive or a new administration.
New administration.
Yes. What should Nigerians expect from this NBA? What are we going to see this time around?
We have already, you can see, you were there, present at the State of the Nation dialogue. This is exactly where we have already, hit the ground running. I'm not the spokesperson for Nigerian Bar Association. It is the president that has the responsibility to speak to the citizens and to speak to whatever issue as the spokesperson of the Nigerian Bar Association. But as a member of this particular executive, I must tell you that we have already marshaled our plans in getting to, because what the citizens even expect from us are not much. It is for us to act as a kind of agent in driving some accountability from some of those whom we must have, given powers to, to rule us or to lead us. So the NBA will be there to be speaking. If your rights are being violated wrongly, and we get to hear, NBA is ready for us to, to take it up. And as you can see, a lot of issues that have been happening in the country, the NBA have always been issuing a statement. And not only issuing a statement, being in forefront in making sure that justice is actually obtained for that particular victim. So we are out purely for this particular. It is just a continuity from the last administration of Olumide Akwata. You saw how it happened, and this is a continuation of where he stopped. And I know that it's a particular roadmap, which whoever that is coming after us definitely will toe that particular line. And Nigeria will be better for it.
All right, I think that's fair enough. Now, let's start entering some specific issues now. Let's start with will I call it the warning or the cautioning by your president about lawyers who criticize or condemn the Supreme Court judgments, but particularly the one featuring the Senate President and his seat. So I'd like to get more about that. Is there something inherently wrong with criticizing Supreme Court judgments, or for those of us who don't know, what happens? What is it about that, and what are the rules, or how should it be done actually?
Well, like as I said, I'm not the spokesperson of Nigerian Bar Association, but as a citizen, as a lawyer, we have been trained not to join issues with the judgment of any court, no matter how wrong. And in fact, there is no wrong judgment. Every judgment is good. You have all the whole rights to proceed to the other angle. But when a Supreme Court have given a verdict, you must definitely obey and comply to that. Highest you can do is to take your matter to God. You understand what is that? So it is wrong, absolutely wrong for any lawyer to criticize. But we can subtly critique a particular judgment in a subtle way. But coming up to even identifying a judge who delivered a particular ruling and, trying to identify to their children and family members and all that. So it's completely a threat, and it is not healthy. So Nigerian Bar Association definitely will never, fold their arms and watch something like that happen. I am not the spokesperson of Nigerian Bar Association, but I know the leadership of the NBA, which I'm happy to be part of. Our president will never, because he has already warned everybody that if you dare criticize, not criticizing, not critiquing. So there are two different things there. So you can critique, but you don't need to criticize, as if you have your power to overturn. You have only way, whenever judgment is given, you proceed to appeal. So lawyers are not meant to just behave like market women or market men and start, talking bad about the judiciary. And we are meant to protect, because one of our responsibility is to protect for the welfare of our members and protection of the judiciary. They are part of our responsibility. So it behoves on every lawyer to know that we are one. And we may critique, but we shouldn't criticize unnecessarily.
All right, so I think that's fair enough. Well, just for the sake of curiosity, does this extend to Nigerians who just, who might not be aware of the rules? Because I recall, I think a past NBA president has sought to make it binding on all Nigerians. I can't recall the details of that. But can an average Nigerian just say, you know what, I don't agree with this judgment. I don't, being that they are not learned, so to speak, in the law.
No, even lawyers, there are people who has that particular fundamental right in them, enshrined in the Constitution for expression. You have absolute right to say whatever that is there. But there are some certain things that you don't need to take too far. All you need to do is that there is a venue for you to appeal a particular judgment. So, but ordinarily, I know that a lot of Nigerians have been reading several opinions. You can write an opinion, and the opinion sometimes, can be used to kind of, review some of these, judgments. But it is not like coming out to lambast and, using some derogatory words against a decision, because the way you look at a particular judgment might not be the same way the arbiters, the judges will look at it. And judges only determine what is presented to them, not what you know or what you've preempt or what you believe that may have been, presented. But there are some certain things which ordinary person do not know that is contained in their pleadings and all that. So it is better for us to just always take it the way we have said it. But you can say, you can critique, and you can, but you don't need to use some derogatory words against the judges.
Yeah. Indeed, that is a fair stance to take. So I'd just like to mention one of the issues that arose. You spoke about fighting for justice and all of that. There's an issue of Bolanle Rahim, a lawyer who was shot, who lost her life due to trigger-happy policeman or thereabouts. Cases like that, when it happens, how should things be addressed in terms of getting justice? People say, what, it's because he's a lawyer. That is why the NBA was so interested. That's why they, caused a lot of, because we saw that the NBA was really at the forefront of that issue. But for an average person who goes through these things, there are numbers of just as I speak with you, just about some days ago, another investigative report came about a key person in this government, so on and so forth. But people are suffering cases of human rights abuse. So now, I have to take you now to a critique by one of the presidential candidates. You were there, so you heard him. I'd just like you to respond to that. The AAC presidential candidate, where he said that the NBA can host events and State of the Nation, but that they should be, keeping the money and using it to help with human rights issues. So that being said, what is the access for the average person to lawyers and all that, and protecting themselves when they encounter these issues?
Let me just remind Nigerians that we have 125 and an additional 3 new branches created, which is 128 branches. By our constitution, the vice chairman of each branch is in charge of the human rights. All I need to inform the Nigerians is just purely, even if going through Google or locating any of the branches across the federation, reaching out to the chairman on issue of human rights. The thing is clear. In fact, we are the highest in terms of civil society issue and all that, where we are already rooted in almost nooks and crannies of this particular country. And what I am saying in essence is that the NBA did not just look at Bolanle. I have forgotten the other young guy who was equally murdered by that same, allegedly murdered by that same police station in Lagos. NBA have taken up that particular case. So you cannot come up to, generalize that it's because of the lawyers. NBA is for every citizen of this country, not only lawyers, because it could happen to anybody. And that is why this leadership have made it a clear point that reach out to the branches in the federation. There is a human rights desk being headed by the vice chairman vice chairman of all the branches in Nigeria. And whatever you relate there, and not only that one, NBA by Section 5 of the Constitution granted access to the first, second, third to lead the 3 regions of this country. I am in charge of the North. The first is in charge of the East, while the third is in charge of the West. So the way our own Constitution divided the country, it is East, West, and North. You understand what is there? So we are to reach out to the branches, collect information as regards to this kind of issues, and bring it to the national burner, and so that it can be, handled. So a lot of things, the way we have been, modeled, it is purely for us to reach out and assist every Nigerian. But there is no way we can help when we do not hear. All we are asking for, let the information be made available through any of the local branches. And you will see the NBA. This is a particular NBA that, as long as some of us are there, the NBA vibrancy in human rights will be so enormous. I must tell you that. And we are happy that we have a president too, who is very, very ardent in pursuing anything that has to do with human rights and abuse of, powers and all that. So the president have done well, as long as I'm concerned, from all his interventions so far.
All right, let me ask what some might consider a difficult question. In the quest, for human rights, people wonder, why is this person a human rights activist? What do they stand to gain? Because people have realized that, or let me not say realize, they have a belief that when you do things out of the goodwill of your heart, it doesn't pay. So the question is, this framework that has been put on ground, how do the lawyers, because the lawyers are humans too, they also need to take care of things, So when you're taking your time, your valuable time, and fighting the good fight, who is catering for the lawyer? Where do you take, for instance, someone who can't fight for themselves? They come to you, human rights issue. Ideally, if it was someone who could, you would charge them, they would pay for your services. But for those who can't, who is taking care of the lawyers in that respect? How do you make this framework work so that lawyers can do these things without worrying about themselves and saying, what's going to happen to me? Stuff like that.
That is why when we started with our contribution to the society. We are not just called to come to the society and make money. Lawyers are rich, no doubt about that. We get money from those we ought to get money from. But there are some certain persons in the country that we know that cannot afford representation as it pertains to litigations and criminal or whatever. And that is why even for you to attain to the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, you are meant to have certain number of cases done pro bono. Pro bono is free of charge. But that apart, if I have my ways, I will ask that it be reviewed that as long as you are a lawyer, you must, as a matter of urgency, be supplying 2 pro bonos per year. No matter whatever, in case you want to, assess any of the good things. So, coming back to our question, it is something that is ordained by God, and it is not everyone that does that. There are few of us who believe that we owe the society a lot. And owing the society is for you to give back to the society. And how do you give back to the society? It is for you to look at the pains of the society and trying to salvage it. I once handled a matter against these defunct SACs. I started it as 2017. I got them discharged from a competent court of jurisdiction in Apo just last year. Just last year, about October, November, thereabout. And these are innocent Nigerians seen moving around, but they were picked. And when I got to station on our kind of oversight of visitation by the magistrates, and all that. So we got to see some persons who have not been charged to court. So we made sure that they were charged. And I was assigned to defend them. There were about 6 of them. And I got them, I didn't make noise about it. But that is humanitarian. And that is one of the things, because I saw some of them, their teeth being removed in the process of torturing. Some of them witnessed how the order of their colleagues in the prisons were executed. They told me a lot of stories. But what pained me so much, that led me in trying to, that convinced me in taking responsibility of handling that matter, was they told me that they were used to be used as parading persons. They paraded them in front of machine guns, as if they kidnapped, they did all that and all that. I tried as much as possible to assess such picture. It was not anywhere, but they told me in confidence, and they testified in court. Court has the record that they were all paraded in about 3 occasions along Kaduna Road, everywhere. But what they were charged for was just armed robbery in Abuja. But in the end, they were all discharged and acquitted. And they are doing well in their various districts. One have sent me a picture of the houses they are building, but because that's his major work and all that. So I think I'm so glad seeing that I was used in rescuing 6 Nigerians. These are future president of this country. Nobody knows. So that is the joy we derive. And in the end, one day at appointed time, you will be asked, what did you do to humanity? So most of us who are believers understands the spirit of helping. So I shed tears even seeing Nigerians suffer. If I could have my way, I know a lot that I could do, but the resources are not there. And I must tell you that from that prosecution of that matter, 2017 to date, I spent personal income over 10 to 15 million. Giving them personal money to take home, filing matters, arranging, paying, all the juniors that I take, a lot of things, logistics and all that for that period. That is my own sacrifice for the country. But I thank God that I may not be the best, but the NBA saw me worthy to, elect me as the second vice president. And by the grace of God, maybe in 8 years' time, I will be contesting for the president. And definitely, that will be the peak where we will now use our talent to help the masses and to help the country.
All right, that's fair enough. It's always good to hear such stories. I'm sure some Nigerians who might feel hopeless out there, they're happy to hear that such can happen.
Yes.
All right, let's just quickly speak about what the NBA is doing now in terms of relations with presidential candidates and making demands and hoping to, hold them accountable to those demands. I'd like to know what the relationship is like between, the law generally, or the judiciary, and the executive, and how is it meant to be? I think that is the real question, because when we look at the legislature and the executive, people have been condemning the Senate president for making a comment where he said that the legislature is not there to give problems to the executive. And people found it weird, even though he wasn't really saying anything so special. But it seems as though people want the 3 arms of government not to be too, for lack of a better word, chummy. So I'd like to know, what is it like, and how should it be in an ideal situation? What should their relationship be like? Do they have to be best of friends, or do they have to just do their jobs and move on?
No, the only key word in explaining this is independence. The 3 arms must be independent of each other, collaborating in terms of professionalism. I don't see you, if I have my way, I don't see a president sitting on appointment of a judge. I don't see why a governor must appoint or ratify the appointment of a governor. I mean a judge, a state, kind of this. So the independence should be total. Because I do not see how I will appoint you and you will, turn back, to deal with me in that particular circumstances. And we have seen severally of some meritorious appointment to be done by some state judges. State, the CJ, Chief Judge of every state. Some governors will reject it. They will reject it overwhelmingly. But there should be independence. but as well, they should collaborate in making sure that dividends of that particular office is actually meted out for the citizens to enjoy. But the independence is the watchword, and so that if you are meant to be in the executive, definitely you are there, and you should be able to, carry out your function without fear or favor. The same way the person who has been appointed as a CJ or whatever, or the chief judge must deliver their judgments the way it is. It reflects by the tenets of the position they occupy, and by that, society will be very, very at peace. So I continue to say that the best word there is there should be independence of the three, so that everyone must know their lane, maintain your lane, and make sure that you deliver while you are there. But the way it gives overriding influence on the executive is what is actually, causing some of these things. But those who knows their onions, even if you have been appointed, you have been appointed, not appointed to serve the president. You have been appointed to serve your role as a particular, either the CJ or the state chief judge. So you must be upright, and you must, make sure that all your dealings with the masses or the society or whatever that comes before you must be to the interest of justice, not for the wits and caprices of those who appointed you.
All right, that is fair enough. That being said, I want to address an issue now in terms of that relationship. The executive is meant to, we were taught in school back then, the executive enforces, the judiciary interprets. Now, when it comes to that enforcement, I'd like to get, what can be done, because when you were talking about how lawyers shouldn't criticize or condemn judgments because they have other means, which is to simply go to the court if you have issues. So that being said, when that has happened and the court has said something, what do we do when perhaps the executive doesn't follow through? Now, I'll take two instances. Sometime last year, there were two cases where we heard in the news that different courts had ordered the arrest or the detention of two persons. One was the IG of police, and the second was the EFCC chairman. And a lot of people saw the news and immediately said, it can't happen. No, it's not possible. There's no way, But then people wonder, is that how it should be in another clime? If that order is given, shouldn't it just simply be obeyed before any other thing? Or are there other means, I don't know if you can educate us on that.
You actually said something in other clime, meaning that you have completely exonerated this country, or you have made this country to be a country that do not obey laws. But I said that when the aspect of the judiciary delivers a particular judgment, it is not their responsibility to make sure that it's executed. There are organs, and these organs, it is use the enforcement, law enforcement agent and all that to do that. And you know what happened in the EFCC. Some of those judgments actually awoken some inner spirit in some of those executives. And they were able to comply within the shortest period of time. But in the other claim, as you rightly said, some persons ought to resign. Some persons ought to obey and all that. But we are getting there. I must tell you that the procedure we are reaching, before, you hardly can hear where a judge would deliver judgment against some of these kind of, executive organs and all that, leaders of those organs of government. But it is happening now. It shows that the judiciary is actually moving. It might be a little bit slow, but I tell you that they have really moved a little bit step forward in having that particular courage and that latitude to do what they are doing. And I must tell you that in time to come, a particular better judgment, and not only better judgment that will be enforced by mere pronouncing it, the body language of the real CNC the president would definitely show the other way and make sure that it is obeyed.
All right. I don't know if you can just comment a little on the issue with the governors and the president. The various things are flying around. If, for instance, the Kaduna State governor, just after the president made a pronouncement in the morning, at about the afternoon or thereabouts, he made his own pronouncement to Kaduna residents, telling them to ignore any quote-unquote illegal or artificial deadline in terms of the Naira swap issue, where the president said those notes remain banned. And so some persons are looking at the governors and saying that they are insurrectionists. And others are saying that no, the Supreme Court is behind them, so that they've not said anything wrong. So, I don't know if you can help us a little bit, especially in terms of, did the president go against?
Well, actually, I must tell you that some of these national issues are best to be, pronounced by my president.
Right.
It is not something, no matter if I'm speaking as Clement Chukwuemeka, I have an office, which is the second vice president, and whenever some issues of this national importance comes to bear, definitely they will relate it to my office, and by extension, it's as if I am overshooting the voice of the president. You understand what I'm saying? But let me just say it as a Nigerian. Two wrongs can never make a right. And the ruling, the ex parte ruling, has it there pending the determination of the motion. A lot of people are looking at it from the 15th day ultimatum, but there is pending the determination or hearing of the applicants or whatever motion that they have filed. That motion have not been taken. So if I were to be the president, I will have restrained and allow the Supreme Court to finally let rest of that particular motion whenever it is ripe. You understand, to be heard. So on that note, president ought to have restraint, no doubt about that. But President April is a human being who feels the pulse of the society. And the society at large may, in fact, the policy that led to most of all this, don't be surprised that almost 50 to 60% of the citizens are in support of it. So he has looked at the pulse and made whatever, release some statements which indirectly, subsidized, that kind of, try to ameliorate the suffering that we were by releasing all the 200 Naira notes. But coming to this counter statement made, that is why I say two wrongs cannot make a right. Coming to the counter statement made by a governor. I was listening to one of the programs, an interview in one of your sister channels in Kaduna or thereabout, where an alleged, let's say an illiterate, saying that there is no way that they can obey the governor, that it is like when a Rufai says something, the councillor in their locality will counter him and will get to obey the councillor. That in this right, that the Rufai is like the councillor, while the president is like the governor. So you can imagine that particular reasoning, which is very apt. So you know that even the least persons down the line understands that the superiority in the hierarchy represents the president. And on this monetary policy, it is only CBN that can take permission from the president in some of the policies that has to do with monetary. They cannot take permission or any directive or any instruction from the governor. So, and you can see people are not taking the money in Kaduna. They are not taking it. Likewise, some of the judicial outfit that you go for filing, they are still insisting of taking what is already there out. You understand what is there? So what is there is that there is no way the statement of a governor can override the statement of a president in terms of this kind of policy that is exclusive preserve of the of the CBN and the, and the president and the CBN, as enshrined in the section 22, I think it's 22(1) and 23 thereabout of CBN Act. So when you look at it from that angle, there is no way. And there are some persons who are bigger than the others. And I know if there are some, if this statement was made by some certain governors, by now, they must have been somewhere even invited. That is treasonable. What El-Rufai did was purely treasonable. And I think he ought to apologize to President. I wouldn't know if President Muhammad Buhari would take it. But for the policy and what it sought to, achieve, I think even NBA, by the help of the President, actually was the first who really, kind of muted that particular idea that this policy need to be implemented in a particular order. And it was obeyed. It was extended. So knowing fully that NBA was the first to raise this issue, upon our visit to the Minister for Finance, this issue, and the Minister commended for us being the first to mute this particular issue. It was our letter to the CBN governor and all other concerned bodies that even led to some of those governors trying to understand some of the rudiments and some of the purports of the CBN Act. So you can see that NBA is in forefront of even protecting the life of Nigerians and making sure that Nigerians live the way they ought to. And I must tell you that we are in salvaging a lot of things, and we know that we'll get there. But for the statement of the governor, it can never override the statement of the governor. No, I mean the president, and the president ought to, in summary, relax and await the decision of the Supreme Court. Nobody, no single soul, including the president, has any power to disobey anything, any ruling or judgment that comes out of the Supreme Court.
Well, I think that's a very balanced answer there. Right, just to round up, this is a final question. There's a joke going around that lawyers are, licking their lips right now because it's election season and there's going to be loads of electoral disputes ongoing. So I'd like to get your thoughts. Do you think the new Electoral Act, the Electoral Act 2022, will either increase or reduce what we're going to see? Because even pre-election, we've seen a lot of cases come up from the primaries and thereon. We've even seen some parties going after the validity of the candidacy of their opponents and their competitors and so on and so forth. Would the Electoral Act in any way reduce this, or has it actually, created more avenue for people to find, ways to seek redress when they feel that they've been done wrong?
Well, I must tell you that whoever that mooted the idea of amendment of this current Electoral Act will make heaven. The person will make heaven in the sense that in as much as it might not be the finality of the cure of malpractices and the kind of things we see in electionary season, but I must tell you that it has a little bit taken us a little bit far from some of the litigations. There will be a time based on this Electoral Act that when you lose, nobody will tell you not to go for appeal. If you need to go to appeal, I think it is beholden on the judiciary to impose a very stringent fine for coming towards the time of the court. You saw what happened in Osun. The matter is on appeal. But it is very, very clear that accreditation of voters must be done with beavers, as enshrined in Section 47, Sub 2. There shall not be anything like overvoting on all that. So if you decide to now implement manual accreditation, you are on your own. The law is already clear on that. You understand what I'm saying? Then when you look at issue of that particular, let's say, I think section 51 sub 2, when you look at it from that angle, when there is overvoting, they are mandated currently now to delete and, you know, kind of cancel that particular polling booth that got overvoted based on what is contained in the beavers and what you have on your own, you know, surface of it. So when you look at it from that angle, you see that there is a very powerful, beautiful legislation that is coming out from there. And I cannot recall, I think, one section that has to do that INEC observers must monitor some of the pre-election matters. So those ones that INEC did not monitor, and there is no affidavit to such effect of them monitoring it. If you take them to anywhere, definitely you're on your own. So there are a lot of things. Before, some persons will be organizing one primary here, the other person will be organizing this one primary from the other area. But currently now, it is the one that is being monitored by the INEC, wherein when they are called, they will continue to identify which particular one they monitor. And I think the electoral act has come to at least solve 50% of our problems. And I know going forward, as we continue to go into election, definitely we will experiment some of the lapses again and, you know, garnish that particular electoral. By the time, let's say in the next 4 or 5 years, I don't think people will be going for those who, you know, lost in elections. Definitely will take their matters to God and, you know, hope for another day.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sir Chukwuemeka Clement. It's always enlightening to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.